Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited for the first session of our AESC Executive Search Advantage workshop series, and we're so happy that you all could join us today. So welcome to today's session, the Search Efficiency Playbook, AI Strategies for Managing Multiple Searches Without Burnout. My name is Rebecca Ditchie, and I am the Senior Program Manager for Learning and Development at the Association of Executive Search and Leadership Consultants. This is the first of 3 sessions in our 2025 Executive Search Advantage workshop. The 2025 series will equip participants with the skills to manage multiple searches, collaborate effectively across teams and leaders, enhance efficiency on complex projects, and confidently integrate AI and emerging technologies to better streamline your workflow and your outcomes. Today, we are pleased to welcome AESC members, executive search professionals, and in-house talent acquisition specialists to our session. For those who are less familiar with AESC, we represent the firms who recruit and advise the world's leaders. AESC sets the highest quality standards for the profession, ensuring that businesses, organizations, and clients worldwide can identify, attract, and leverage the best board and C-suite talent. There will be quite a few resources shared from today's session. First and foremost, each of you should have received a workbook to help guide you through today's content. I'm going to share that in the chat in just a few moments for you all as well if you didn't have the chance to download that yet. In addition, following today's session, you will also receive a workshop summary, which will include information shared among participants and important takeaways from the session, most notably the AI prompts that we will discuss today. One of the most powerful things about this workshop series is that it's designed to work for everyone, no matter where you sit within your firm or how long you've been in the profession. If you're a managing director or a partner, this session offers frameworks that help you lead with clarity. You'll lead with practical strategies for standardizing search delivery, reducing team burnout, and protecting your firm's reputation for excellence. If you're a mid-career consultant or a project manager, you'll find tools to streamline how you juggle multiple mandates, communicate more effectively with stakeholders, and apply automation in ways that let you focus on high-value work. And if you're a new researcher or rising talent, this workshop gives you something even more powerful: language, structure, and confidence. You'll walk away knowing how to manage up, how to anticipate the needs of your team, and how to add strategic value beyond the basics. These are the skills that help you to grow as a contributor to a true partner in the search process. No matter your role, the takeaway is the same. There is a better, more efficient, and more human way to deliver exceptional search work, and AI can be a powerful ally when used wisely. With that, I'm excited to introduce you all to Stephanie Franklin, our facilitator for today. Stephanie has over 25 years of experience in executive recruitment. Her experience as a managing partner for a recruiting research practice includes clients in both the profit and nonprofit sectors. With her initial focus in healthcare, Stephanie quickly grew her clientele to include a broad spectrum of industries, including technology, nonprofit, and higher education. She is known for taking a partnership approach with her clients in a manner which engenders trust. She has been a valued partner of AESC since 2023, leading sessions for both our workshop series and our certificate in executive research. With that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie to get us started.
Great, wonderful. Rebecca, thank you so much for the introduction. And also thanks to each of you for joining today as we just work together to focus on some ways where we can work both effectively and efficiently. You know, as I think about what Rebecca said, doing this work in executive search for a long time, there is so much opportunity for growth. Each and every year that passes that I have the opportunity to be in the industry, one of the things that really energized me is to find new and creative ways to do my work. So when I think about just generally workload mastery and the tools and technology and avoiding burnout, you know, and all the things, they all go hand in hand. We have to allow our workload balance to be stronger and stronger in order to maintain that effectiveness. We also have to maximize the tools and technology that are literally at our fingertips in order to work at a better pace so that we can prevent burnout. So the pace is a balanced pace and one where we're using tools that we need to really learn and grow in all the time to really benefit us. So, whether we like it or not, one common issue that we have is open searches. That means we've got good business that can also feel like problems. And so when I think about our opportunity to, whether you're a managing director and you're leading a team, um, we need consistency. We need to have client satisfaction. Whether you're mentoring that junior talent or you are the junior talent, maybe you're a new researcher just beginning to understand the rhythm of executive search. I think this is where we're going to find more systems and strategies so that we can have frameworks around, supporting one another internally, creating management plans. You see here the bullets on the slide, leveraging technology to streamline our execution, and of course, time management and burnout as well, and avoiding burnout as well. I think for what I would just speak to is that whatever role you hold today within your firm, whether it's the MD or consultant or you're newly into the work and functioning and serving as a researcher or project coordinator, my goal is not to overwhelm you with lots of tools and information. We want to give you some things to try, some things to put in place, some structure that's going to help you take back control of the process. And that way you've got your, control in your calendar, your energy level. And so whether it's your first search or, your thousandth, the need for clarity and efficiency doesn't change. So that well-being never changes either. So I want to dive in together as we kind of walk through some of these elements in the workshop. Want to really speak to a note about AI. This is where we have both a real opportunity and a responsibility within executive search. And so right now we're using generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude and other industry specific platforms. And they're really giving us as search professionals some great leverage. And so we can do things like graph candidate summaries. We can do that in minutes instead of hours. We can build stakeholder maps on the fly. We can do some automated reporting, etc. But what I want to recognize is using AI within executive search is not just about saving time. It's really evolving and increasing our value and our contribution. Clients are not just looking for search firms that are faster at writing emails or better emails. They're really looking for partners that will have reliable processes to include better insight. And my experience has been, and really for me implementing, I think in the last 2 years, AI to enhance all of those things, the processes and the insights. However, we've got to talk about risk. One thing I know is that AI is only as good as the data and instruction that we're giving it. So, if we input client sensitive information into public models, we could very quickly and easily breach confidentiality. If we copy and paste entire resumes or interview transcripts into an open tool, you're violating privacy laws. So we would be remiss if we did not address some of those things at the beginning of this workshop. So what do we do? We've got to get intentional. If you take anything from this workshop today, my hope is that not every step of the search process needs AI and AI involvement, but if you begin to identify the tasks that are repetitive, that are kind of rules-based or text-heavy, it can really be a co-pilot for you. Second, we use private and secure environments. If you can, use those whenever possible. Tools like Copilot and Enterprise ChatGPT or embedded AI that are in CRMs will help you work more safely within your firm's policies. So we want to just start with this today. Use secure environments. That's going to apply in a number of ways. So as we talk this through and we talk through strategies throughout the workshop, we want to say that you know that you are using a secure environment and you're not breaching confidentiality. Also, we want to stay ahead of the regulatory curve. Okay, so countries and states already are beginning to craft very specific AI legislation kind of ahead of that. Couple of sample laws in New York right now are even requiring employers that use automated decision tools and hiring to disclose their usage and then submit any bias audits available. So those things are surfacing. That's just one example. We just want to be aware and have that on the forefront. One thing I know within executive search and talent acquisition, our transparency in not just how we access the candidate, but also how we are using the tools to support our assessment. So if AI is touching your part of the process, just be clear about it, how it's supporting it. It doesn't replace human judgment, but it's giving us the support. I want to think about it just in the name of again, transparency, what this session will and kind of won't be. Our goal for today is to discuss how to design really structured and scalable search management plans augmented by AI. We want to use AI tools throughout to automate some of those administrative tasks and help us, enhance our decision making. And then also a big part is to apply some time and task management strategies to our work. So lots of free, low cost AI tools available that's going to really support things in very meaningful ways. If you aren't within an organization that's implemented something firm wide yet, you still have some great tools at your fingertips. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Today's about broad access, whether, again, you are a couple months into your role or, making sure that you have years and years of experience, but you want to stay ahead of the curve. We really encourage you to try some of the things that we're going to discuss today about working more efficiently and effectively. So next, we're going to talk about our search management plan. Thinking through what that means. We talked a little bit about AI and that implementation. So we want to do search management audit. So Rebecca, I think we're going to go back to that. You have received the search management audit in a pre-session email. And also what we're calling our workbook or our playbook. We share that at the start of the session. And so after the session, I want you to take the time to complete the audit yourself and do some reflection questions, I think is for lack of a better word. I want to do a quick poll. So answer a couple of these questions on a poll. I'm going to, where the poll's going to pop up and I'll let Rebecca get that going. But I want you to put scale of 1 to 5, 5 being everything tidied up. You have a clear system for tracking deliverables and deadlines across all your active searches. How would you rate yourself? You have notes, research, and candidate data. They're easy to find. They're easy to interpret. How would you rate yourself? And then you use CRM project tools, sharing documents effectively to manage those searches. So go to the poll and take a second to give us your results, and then the results will pop up and give us some feedback. This is really just a time to be reflective. That is something that we really want to make sure allocating time based on priority and impact and not just urgency, if that makes sense. So Rebecca, when the polls are closed, let me know and you can pop up those responses once everyone has had a chance to.
We'll give everybody about 10 more seconds. It looks like we have close to 75 people participating.
Great. Wow. It's wonderful.
All right, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1.
Great. Perfect. So we'll look at, some of the answers and responses. I love the honesty. I love the transparency. What I see here, I'm glad you're here because hopefully as you not only take time in this 90 minutes, it's going to go by really fast. I believe what we're putting in your hands in terms of the playbook and in terms of the data and information that's supporting you in the follow-up email that you're going to receive is really going to help these numbers go up a little higher. I think that's going to be important so that we can just see those scalings. It's good to evaluate kind of where we are collectively and really be able to see that pull. So Rebecca, thanks for doing that. And we'll go to the next slide. I want to think about creating structured, scalable search management plan. And that focus is going to be a theme, a constant theme throughout all of the workshops. Today, we're going to really recognize and remember we are not just here to fill a role, okay? We are here to think, to educate, to discern, and really help teach both our clients and our candidates, not just what we do, but also why it matters. And honestly, the reality is executive search is not always really well understood. I know many of you will appreciate that comment, both by the clients, by those that are decision makers and stakeholders within your client firms, and then also within the candidates. What I recognize is we're often brought in very, I would say, high stakes moments. If I could see each of you, some of you would kind of be shaking your head. You've got a CEO stepping down. The board wants transformation. Team is missing a critical leader, and their expectation is, okay, go find somebody great, do it quick. And rarely do people outside of our profession, fully grasp the depth and complexity and even the strategy involved in making that happen. So part of our opportunity is to slow down and say, okay, let me show you how this works. We need to take time to explain why we don't just post a job, why we do map the market, why we're not just sending resumes, why we assess for leadership, culture add, potential, all of those things, why we need the alignment and clarity before we start outreach. We can't do those things that I've just mentioned without it. So, executive talent acquisition isn't transactional. It's precision work. It's built on insight. It's built on trust. And that's also where generative AI becomes more of an ally to us. Again, not to replace our judgment, but to amplify it. So it's going to help us educate. It's going to help us communicate. It's going to help us build. We can build our stakeholder maps more efficiently, draft our client summaries with polish and more quickly. I want to think about something too. We can simulate some candidate objections and then craft language so that we're ready to respond. We know our best candidates are going to tell us no 4 times before they engage. And so what does that look like? And what might that mean to get some language that's unique and different, and use AI to support that? So in addition to educating the clients, the same goes for candidates, right? We can help them navigate opportunities with thoughtfulness too. We don't just say to them, hey, are you interested? We say, let me talk about your goals. Let's talk about alignment. If it's not this role, tell me about what would be right for you. And often, in those conversations, we become career educators, career counselors, and helping leaders really understand the landscape so that in addition to our client decisions, our candidates are making great decisions as well. And we're going to find very often that because we're doing this strategically, more folks are willing to engage with us. We become more like a strategic advisor. So I would love to also do this did come, the search management plan came in the pre-session email, and it was also in the chat. But we're going to go through a search management plan, okay? And we're going to provide this to you with 10 basic points, some of which we may cover in workshop 2. So we'll note that we might not get to all 10 today. But I want to, before giving you our list of 10, I want you to think about your search management plan, what that really means, what that really looks like. And I'd love to hear, we're going to do another poll, okay? And that how many of you actually take the time to document an actual search management plan for each search that you run. So I'm not just talking about, having an intro meeting, taking some notes, and then off to the races, but really documenting a thorough plan for each search. So Rebecca, if you don't mind, let's pop up the poll. Oh wait, we're not going to do poll. We're going to just do a chat. But if you would, put in the chat, please, whether or not uh, you do a plan. Just tell us. I'd love to hear it. And it's okay, no judgment. If your answer is a big fat absolutely not, or yes, I'm very thorough. I would love to just have a few folks hop in the chat and let us know if you're documenting a search management plan as a part of your workflow. Awesome. Ooh, always. I love it. Yes, lots of yeses. Perfect. That's great. Sort of. Thank you for that transparency. Perfect. Developing a plan, interested in hearing more, love it. High level overview sometimes. So look, this is wonderful. This is really what we hope would kind of collectively come together. Client work plan as where an internal management plan. That's great. What I want to do is really recognize and stress here how what we're about to offer is going to be a template based off some, project management basics that apply to executive search. Each firm is operating differently. What we suggest in our sessions is some of what we suggest may work for you, maybe not for all. But if it gets you thinking, many of you are saying, yes, we want to implement this across communication with client. We want to implement this across communication with our internal teams. So consistency and sameness. It doesn't have to be exactly like what we're about to show you. So thank you for putting that info in the chat. That's perfect. So here are on this slide, it's going to outline what we believe are the 10 building blocks of a strong, keyword, repeatable, and also scalable search management plan. So whether you're leading one search or juggling 6 or what have you, you can really break it down. And I've found that at least addressing each of these components are going to reduce ambiguity. It's going to clarify things. We're going to be accountable internally and to the client. And then you and your decision makers are going to stay aligned from kickoff to close. So what I see that we're looking and beginning with a foundation. What are our search objectives? What's the scope of the search? Obviously, strategic North Star. What is the higher need to achieve? Why now? And what defines success? I love some questions that go beyond what job are we filling? So much more than that. What does the higher need to achieve? Why now? And what defines success? And then what I also want to look at, and we've got a question in the chat on the search management plan. Rebecca, if you'll look and see what page that's in, that's great. You got it. Second is our stakeholder map. We're going to ensure that you know who needs to be consulted, who needs to be involved, who has the final say, and how communication should flow. So without this, the updates become pretty fragmented. Talk about this a little more, giving the example of my error in not putting together a stakeholder map and what happens. So I think sometimes we can really help each other learn from not only what we do well, but also our mistakes. The milestones and timelines and deliverables, it's the roadmap. It gives the structure, helps us manage the expectations, just really proactively. And then also, as I think about the candidate brief and evaluation framework, get some consistency to the assessment. We'll talk about those key things and examples in a few minutes. This is where we move from, resume review to truly impact measurement. One thing I know is that we need a solid reporting and communication plan internally and externally. And it doesn't have to have every bell and whistle. I want to encourage this, that whether you have an incredible amount of tech support from the process management systems you're using, from whatever your firm applies, we can still get creative ways to implement this, even in some of the basic strategies, and using some tools that would be at your fingertips. Workflow and tools, contingency planning, time management, and capacity. This is where efficiency lives, quite candidly. This is where AI and automation will help you, whether it's you're generating summaries or flagging your timelines and risks before they snowball. So a lot of this work in planning is to prevent the unexpected, to think through scenarios so that you can become very proactive in your search plan and not reactive when things are falling apart. we know we're going to have those contingency plans needed because people are human and plans change. But I think if we're not thinking ahead of time how these things are succinct, then we can get in trouble. So document and version control, it sounds so tactical, but it's really critical, especially when you've got multiple team members on a search, you've got a lot of client visibility. Your document structure, you're just going to save time if you can start from the beginning using one place and format by way of communication where it goes through the thread all the way through your search. So this is another place where a little bit of reliance on AI can make a huge difference. One thing I want to touch on is burnout mitigation touch points. We will elaborate a little bit more at the end on this topic. But if you're not, let me tell you, having done this work for a very long time, I have learned the hard way how to put these touch points in place, kind of what they are. So, well, I think that in workshop 2, we'll focus in on communication. So some of the things about reporting, and communication plan, documentation, version control are going to come to you in that session. So just note, this is an intro for those. Workshop 3 will be about handling the unexpected. And so contingency planning and handling the unexpected will come in workshop 3 as well. So just a piece, but we'll refer to this as our components of our search management plan as a major part of the content throughout our workshops. So let's dive in a little bit more to your search objectives and scope. Before outreach begins, before names are sourced, before a brief is ever written, every successful search starts with one move, and that's getting really, really clear on the objective and the scope of the assignment. And I guess that sounds obvious, but in my experience, for those of you that have fewer number of years experience, this is probably something that you really want to lean into. I think for those of us that have been doing this work for a long time, this is where we can get a little sloppy. I know that I can. And I think that I know what they need, or I've learned what I needed to learn and really not slowed down enough at the onset. You know, we are essentially highly specialized project managers. And so what we need to know is if we're going to be airtight in delivering those things the client needs, then we have to be thoughtful in the way that we get the launch. The client might give you a job description, but we all know we've got to revise that. We've got to update that. We've got to spend time. Why does the role matter? What's defining success? How is the organizational context, the timing and the market even shaping the need for the hire? We've got to just really spend time now on defining the search objectives and scope. It's not really a formality. It's some strategy where you're no longer a service provider, you're truly a partner. And so then, you could spend hours recalibrating if this part isn't done well. So I know I'm landing on that in a way that is saying things that many of us know as we think about starting a search. But I know that doing this well, not just knowing what to do, but actually doing it and doing it well, big difference. So I'm going to think about things on this step where this slide is going to show 4 subjects that are going to anchor you and truly your whole plan. So think about the obvious. Think about, the role title, the reporting line. Do we understand what position, where that person falls within the organization? And maybe the title's a little misleading. Maybe in one company, the VP may carry the influence of a director elsewhere, or vice versa. What's the reporting line? And that's going to be your roadmap to those responsibility, those power dynamics within an organization. It's going to tell you how much authority the role actually has and how close it's sitting to the decision makers. Is it a decision maker? And so it's going to tell you how much authority then, in order for you to use that language to then communicate to your potential candidates. So I think that's really critical. I also know that if we look, what does the success profile look like? What does the success look like in 12 months? That's one of my, I think, favorite questions to ask when launching a search, is because people start thinking about, what is become vague or kind of bland, and it gets specific. Then, if the client is going to be successful, I'm sorry, if the client is asked, what will make this person successful? um, then they start talking about success, and it equips you to not only share that content with potential candidates, but then begin to assess and evaluate them for um, their fit, whether or not that's something that they've done before, how successful they've been. Um, and then as I think about our third point, why now, and what's happening with the business and within the market, this is totally going to separate us from transactional recruitment to leadership consulting. What's the strategic context of the hire? Is it happening because of growth? Is it happening because of turnaround? Is it happening because of a CEO change, an acquisition, whatever it is? Really be thinking about that. And then talking about our search parameters, um, this is where, that reality check begins to happen, where there's a hard cap on compensation or geography, skills and experiences, etc. So I think for me, if there's a place where I have caught myself becoming complacent, it's not defining these really, really well out of the gates, even though I know it. I intend to, but we're all working quickly. We all have a lot of deadlines. And having your management plan outlined with valuable checked box ability, so that you can make sure there aren't missing pieces, um, and make sure that we're actually covering that at the onset of the search. So thinking about this topic, and how we can use AI in application there, imagine that after your intake meeting, you can drop your notes into a tool like ChatGPT, or you're able to prompt it to be able to synthesize some of the strategic objectives, and make sure you didn't miss something. Make sure that you can surmise it and allow, that kind of support to draft maybe a successful profile in some plain language, or maybe highlight areas that were unclear or contradictory. We can ask these questions. Gap checker. I love scope gap checker. I love that one, where we can review the job description and intake summary. What details about the role scope are not clear or missing? Like, take this, you can actually put this prompt in and use it to see what we've missed. Obviously, we can do a summary generator. That's an example prompt for that. You'll get a copy of this, so this will come out in your email. And then a profile clarifier. So we can take these tools, these AI tools, and really allow some of the prompts to support that outcome. And for those that are not using prompts like this, we've got them here for you. Try it, see how it helps you. Maybe this helps you, maybe it doesn't, but there might be different language that once you begin to experience with what or experiment with what we're sharing, you can then see what applies best for you and for your searches. So now we're going to think about generating a stakeholder map. And we kind of pride ourselves, I think, in search with being master relationship builders. We can, I think, navigate pretty complex client ecosystems. We gain their trust. But even the most seasoned MD or consultant can really be caught off guard if a search has stalled due to misaligned expectations or conflicting priorities, or maybe a hidden influencer, like I mentioned earlier, that surfaced late in the process. I cannot make this up. After a slate of 3 finalists, there was a single finalist that was going to a verbal offer, and a hidden influencer came about in this search that I had not, and in my error, I had not addressed early in process. And I did not, had that individual been included earlier on, and I requested them to be included earlier on, I think we would have been much more successful. And so I feel like for me, this is where the stakeholder map becomes a really great tool. So at its core, it is simply visual representation of everyone that's engaging in the search. Maybe on a CEO search, the hiring committee might be the most visible set of decision makers, but maybe it's the board chair. Maybe the board chair shapes the final call, but whatever we're doing to map out those players early is just going to be really critical. And I think for those that are our search teams managing multiple projects and working across um, those variances and stakeholders, if we don't define them, we're going to forget. We're going to have a gap. We're going to miss it. So suddenly a stakeholder map can be really beneficial because not only does it help us avoid surprises, but it also helps us to stay on target and on point and be sure that along the way, we're communicating with the people that we should be communicating with. So one of the things that would be great is just to have you think about, we're not going to do a poll here, are how many stakeholders do you usually identify for a singular search? And just meaning like who's involved in the decision making. So give me, if you don't mind, just put it in the chat and we'll look up here an estimate of how many decision makers that you might be using. 2 to 3. Okay. Okay. Yep. Unless a board for CEO search, 5 to 7, 3 to 7, 2 to 3. Perfect. So numbers are similar, kind of depending on, I love what Caitlin said, depend on the search, but could be even up to 20, right? If your board size, you're including people that are a part of a larger board, that's also going to be a part of our opportunity, truly. Once I really pause and do this exercise, I found there are far more stakeholders than those I was kind of thinking about in my mind. So taking 5 minutes to create a comprehensive list is great. We're gonna break down the stakeholders, and then we're gonna give you a sample map. So thank you for responding in the chat. I appreciate that. Let's take a look at these who within the client. Some of them seem obvious. Our hiring manager, the hiring committee, the HR person, the talent partner, whomever that is, your board of directors, obviously within your search team, those individuals serving in your firm to collaborate. We know who our candidates also as stakeholders, but I want to be sure we're really thinking about other search influencers as well. Marketing and communications, members from the client team, of course, legal and compliance. We might not be the ones directly communicating to each of them, but we should consider including them. And perhaps it's a search where at least some informational and communication with peers to the position might be beneficial as well. I can tell you when I slow down and include Marcom people in the awareness that the search is going on, very often they will then supply me and even the leaders with good marketing materials or packages that can be sent to potential candidates that are engaging with us to offer more clarity about the organization. They can be a real ally to influence your search. Of course, legal, making sure you're not tripping on anything that we don't need to be tripping on, asking the questions in advance before it becomes a problem. And then also thinking about our map, we can use, and I'm not calling it a map, let's call it a matrix. We've included this in your playbook to take with you, but this is something that you can have AI generate for you. So rather than just sort of filling in a matrix and doing anything by hand, I can use this tool, and I do use this tool in a number of ways, whether it's with communication, whether it's scheduling, whether I need to track deliverables. Sometimes at the onset of the search, we don't really know who needs to receive what level of communication in the search unless we slow down and do this. And so when I think about working efficiently, it could seem cumbersome to spend time on, for each search, but it's a great place to use generative AI. And what I know is if we can develop it, for me, I've got some critical categories: influence level, contribution, and thinking about potential resistance. If I don't think about potential resistance ahead of time, that's going to be a challenge. And so these are the topics that, and uh, sections of this that work for me in the matrix. Think about what might work for you. And we'll go over some critical prompts in the next slide that will be a way for you to extract this. So if you haven't had an opportunity to build a stakeholder map like this yet, then this doesn't, again, have to be time consuming. You can use these prompts to let generative AI assist. These 3 prompts, you're going to get copies of these, and literally you can, you know, be able to practice generating this and then create it your own. Let it build a framework for you. Let it build a draft for you. And I think for me, having the kind of support, even to say, what prompt do I use to extract the data that I need? Here you go. If you want to develop that stakeholder matrix and get something underway to see what might be helpful to you, then here are some prompts to get the list created, get the matrix started, and then even assessing your stakeholder interest. You can categorize these stakeholders by their level of interest in the search process. So that said, I think taking the data that results from these prompts. This next slide, the stakeholder influence versus the interest maker. So their influence versus how interested, what does that matrix look like? If you had a chance just to join the quick webinar where we gave you a little bit of sneak peek into this content, especially when we're working with varied stakeholders, it's really critical to understand how they're influencing the search versus what their interest is in the search. So what I mean by that, you may have a hiring manager, they may be very interested in the success of the search, but maybe they don't have the strategic picture to really help guide it. So you've got to work, they might be a conduit that you work with as, through whom you're working, but ultimately you need the board, you need another C-suite executive, and you have to kind of weigh their influence versus their interest. And that's going to help you in a lot of ways to really understand what communication needs to look like through them and how you might set your scheduling, who those stakeholders are, and what do they need from you in the search process. I think it's a way, this stakeholder influence versus interest matrix, this is a tool that we can use in our searches to, thinking about the level of influence or power, for lack of a better word, and then interest, meaning, are they engaged with us? How's that going? What do we think? It's going to help us as the search team prioritize when information is communicated, how it's communicated, and how often, and just manage those relationships. I just had an opportunity to, in working with the board, I've got half the board, about 4 people on the board that are incredibly engaged and very excited about the search. I've got the other half of the board that is not. And so candidly, it really makes us very aware of communicating, even if we're not getting response, and maintaining that right balance. So if we've got, influence here, we've got high influence, high interest, we've got to manage them very closely. They've got a lot of decision power. They're invested in the search, whether it's the hiring executive, some of the board members, maybe not others of the board members, but those that need high touch, we've got to recognize that. So maybe we've also got high influence, but low interest. We need to monitor that. We need to just kind of keep them informed, keep them satisfied, manage that relationship, making sure that we have an awareness to, maybe it's if it's a CEO search, maybe it's the CFO or other legal advisors or external consultants. Maybe we're making sure that they know we're working to bring the role together, but they don't need to be in the nitty-gritty. And I think too, some of the obvious, and I'll just kind of finish with that. The low influence, low interest is monitor. This is where we don't want any surprises. This is where we don't want to assume. We think based on our communication that it's low influence, low interest, but they could have some impact on the search. And with that, they need the appropriate updating and appropriate monitoring instead of not at all. So I think that in that ways, I want to go to the client first with information, whether it's them. I don't want them coming to me first and saying, okay, what's going on? I want to keep them informed at the appropriate level. I also want to respect the fact that not everybody needs everything all the time, and really assessing and evaluating for that with this content, I think is really important. Let's look at search scheduling and capacity planning. And I think, again, scheduling communication, scheduling of the timeline, all of these have a thread together, but timing's everything. So it's really not just when a candidate is hired, but it's also how we pace the work that's going to get us there. Search scheduling and capacity planning aren't just operational exercises that someone operationally is working on and then tell you. They really have to be the foundation within your firm internally to discuss both for the best things for our clients and also the sustainability for our teams. Human resources are literally the most powerful tool that we have. And then taking the time to discuss what our capacity is, what the cohesive schedule is like for the search, how are we allocating the effectively, kind of playing to our team's strengths, right? So we're not burning out our strongest players via rough management, and we're just giving people too much. That's not even, we're going to get in more of a reactive mode. Maybe your search is going to get delayed. We don't want that. We cannot have a delay in our search. If we give some structure to it, if we don't, I will say, next thing you know, your team is working nights and weekends trying to catch up. It's not because the work was impossible, but because we didn't really plan it out. And then if we're doing this proactively, it shifts to clarifying what phase are we in? Where are we with client reporting? What do the interviews look like? And that's where we can identify I think moments where we need the client engaged, or when we are telling the client, expect to hear from us in this way, so that they are not taking more of our time because they're going, what's going on? And then we can get deeply rooted in that time for deep sourcing, candidate development, and then capacity planning becomes so critical internally. So it's not really enough. I'll say this, it is not enough to know what needs to be done. We need to know who has the bandwidth and the experience to do it well, not just do it, but to do it well. So are our researchers fully booked? Let's talk about that. Is the associate juggling, however many active shortlists, and is your ND or consultant about to travel to another client engagement? How are we communicating for capacity planning in a way that positions everyone for success? So if we don't have a visibility into capacity, what we know, we're going to overload our most valuable people. I know all of you can think about, you might be in that scenario right now. Personally, you may have put some guidelines in place that are helping you not feel as much of the weight of burnout. But if we've got some smart scheduling and then thoughtful capacity planning, we're going to be able to prevent overload. We're going to be able to staff each phase of the search with the right skill set. We're going to be able to know when we can take on a new search and do it well. So there's a level of relief, I think, when we have that kind of understanding. So, if you're an MD or consultant here today, we have a number of you that have joined us. This is a really great place to strategically align with your team at the start of the search. If you're a researcher, an associate, maybe this activity is going to help you, articulate, this is how I can drive value. This is where you need me to spend my time. I know that I normally function in this task, but if this task can be moved over here, let me get into the nitty-gritty of my role. And so there's a lot of cohesion, there's a lot of, communication and, covering roles, defining how we can support one another for sure. But I think it's really important to have a realistic understanding of capacity so that we can deliver consistency and we're not always putting out fires. My goodness. I hope that as my career develops, that I spend less time firefighting and more time, just doing the work that's going to move the needle. So as I think about those internal resources, you say, okay, what is resource planning? How do we do that? Because I feel like some of what I'm communicating is, of course, ideal scenarios. And we know that in the day-to-day, lots of things move around, lots of schedules and impromptu kinds of things. But when we talk about resource planning, it's not just about counting heads. It's about alignment between the talent, the timing, and your tools. So who's been assigned to the search, who owns which phase of the search, who's really monitoring that. A really well-run search has a very clear handoff. Who's leading the client strategy, who's sourcing, who's screening, who's managing things behind the scenes. So without that clarity, we're really risking duplication and having delays, or things are slipping through the cracks too, because we're not understanding who's on first. And I think, do we have the right mix of experience and availability? I think oftentimes folks are tasked to do a role where they haven't been led and mentored. They're just kind of thrown in the deep end. And I think we've got to evaluate for that. What kind of support does that person have? What do they need? And when we think about our top contributors, overextending them, I want to say, always say yes to the new search, always say yes to the new client, always say yes. That has been an overextended pitfall of mine, to unintentionally be overloaded when I do have the experience to execute a new project. And so in that experience, if somebody is constantly in triage mode, even those that are working, and you are the top researcher, you are known for excellent, great, and quality work, overextending you is only going to be a trap, because then the timelines are drifting, everybody's frustrated, burnout occurs. So what I want to make sure that we're doing is really maximizing the tools and the tech to kind of offset some of that manual lift as well. Automatic scheduling. We can do some first pass candidate matching to position descriptions. And really, I want to think about how capacity isn't just about how many searches can a firm or a team take on. It's how are those searches intelligently staffed, and are the right people and the tools in place at the right moments, because different teams have different capacities and abilities, and we need to be able to think about that creatively. So as our resources are not just these fixed limits and numbers, but people with varying strengths and degrees of ability to have capacity for their work on the daily. So we want to have a much more sustainable sort of execution, if you will. So here again, this has come over to you in the email, in the pre-session email, and it's in the chat. This is in the playbook. It's going to be a worksheet designed to help you just step back and take control of your workload. So I would encourage you, this is not just about tracking your tasks. Once we've closed and these things are beginning to make sense, it'll take 5 minutes, but go in there, use the playbook, and just evaluate yourself. It's going to be a way that you can protect your time, also your energy, and also certainly the quality of your work. So if you'll start with section 1, you'll list your active searches. You're going to list the role. Rebecca's put in there, it's on page 7 of the playbook. So thank you for that. It's going to give you a bird's eye view of what's on your plate and how to set those goals and guidelines. Then you're going to move to section 2, and this is where you're going to estimate how much time you typically spend on each search phase. What's time off needed for the kickoff, and everybody's putting together search timelines. That's a given, I'm sure, with the way that everyone responded about their stakeholder meetings, the work you're doing. We all have a search timeline, but how then are we very specifically using that for not only the search scheduling, but our capacity plan? So here in section 2, that's where you're going to estimate how much time you're going to typically spend on each search phase, the kickoff phase, the research phase, outreach, reporting, so on. Multiply that by the number of searches that you're managing, and then help you understand your real load. And I am so guilty of this, not just by my gut feel, but with data. And then there's a lot more capacity to know whether or not saying yes or saying no as you work collectively and within your firm on your capacity. Or if you are asked to do a new project, but you feel overloaded, maybe you really aren't. You just haven't had the time to kind of think about it and think about what those timelines are. So in the section 3 of that page 7, you'll compare your delivery time against your actual weekly capacity. So we're going to have including meetings, admin time, and some buffer space. How about some scheduled time? And we'll get to this later, but scheduled time to eat and to go for a midday walk around the campus or the facility, whatever it is, for that balance that we need to do our work really well. So the goal here isn't to be perfect by any means, but it's really a way for you to just see and get a clearer sense of if you're working at a sustainable pace. And I think the last section on that, it says, where you stretch too thin. So if you evaluate yourself for that, what can you automate that you're not automating now? What can you delegate to resources around you? A lot of times firms have summer interns, et cetera. What can those folks be doing in partnership with you? Even one, small shift that you might not be implementing yet is going to free up huge amounts of time for you. Once I started using AI to help me write my candidate summaries and also manage my calendar, even my weekly updates, and candidate, even some of my internal documents, I just found myself literally with hours more in the work week. And it's better time, and that I think the product is certainly something that is a great product when it comes to the work that I'm, the ways I am implementing AI in my process now. So when I think about this section and prompts that will be helpful to you, again, you'll get a copy. This does not need to be time consuming, okay? But this is where AI can assist you. We want to do a time estimator by phase based on your search description, the scope, estimate how many hours I should allocate for each of the following phases: research, outreach, interview coordination, and reporting. How about try that prompt? Try that prompt. That is going to allow you to thoughtfully evaluate how that applies to you. At the end of the day, your scenario, you may need to use different language to then allow it to become more accurate given the work that you're doing. But I think if we're not pausing to help some assessments, we get really siloed. All we see, like with blinders on, is our day to day. Very often we don't even really know what's going on with any other teams within our firm. And we certainly have less opportunity to grow. But by using AI in some of these places that aren't typically thought to use it, we can then begin to say, oh, I could do this. I need this amount of time here. I'm going to go ahead and block my schedule, my calendar in this ways to do this task. And then the next thing you know, you're much more organized, there's a better flow, etc. We'll talk about, in a minute, we're going to talk about a heat map, but this prompt here is a heat map generator. So kind of given the list of your team and their available hours and their assigned search task by phase, we can kind of create a heat map that will show some workload intensity, being white where somebody's calendar that week is very overloaded, gray is near capacity, and black is someone that actually has capacity that week. And so I'll talk about that in just a second. Certainly a task redistribution plan based on each team member's availability and strengths. Again, research, candidate engagement reporting suggests how we could reassign tasks across the open searches to balance delivery without overloading anyone. See what comes out. I continue to be amazed because it's harnessing information that is out there and available to me from creative leads from others doing this work, and I feel like collectively implementing some of these things at this phase is really going to help us have a better balance. And of course, then a phase specific load balancer, you can use that prompt as well. So let's take a peek at this next slide. And whether or not you choose to evaluate it like this is just one way to see how succinct, it's one way to communicate how we're allocating time and how that will differ based on availability, based on the calendar, based on travel, based on vacation, right? So now that we've gone through, I think, some of the prompts that help us get to that, for me, I'm a really visual person. So having a heat map is going to help me understand my time and then my teammates' time. Many of us are not working side by side in cubicles or in offices. We might be, but we might not be either. Or maybe we have only a couple days a week where we're actually in person together. And even so, I can be working right next to my colleague and have absolutely no idea what their calendar is like. And so this, as you can see by this map, we've shown a team and what the team availability is across 4 roles. Okay, so the researcher, the associate, the MD or consultant, and then the project coordinator, admin support for the search. And so notice how the consultant, their availability is pretty minimal throughout. This may be a week where the consultant is traveling, but it's going to give us an at a glance understanding of how we can allocate resources. Once this is set up and in a way that we're understanding what our internal team is doing, we can really recognize how to quickly share tasks or understand that as associate, you're really going to need to take the reins in communicating with the client that week because consultant is going to be on the plane more than not. And so if we could rebalance the workloads a bit and then doing giving those that are the senior members on our team an opportunity to have those client facing activities. We're talking about search management, but remember there's also business development, and those components, while not often we're not talking about those necessarily here, that does take a demand and time on those folks that are also executing the searches and often the frontline face to the client. So this is where we are not going to do this manually. So think about automatically. You could even update it weekly, you can update it daily, but instead of, this is where AI comes in, and with the right tools, and we're going to give you some of the handouts and some things to try. It's hard to lay out one blanket tool that will work for everyone depending on your setup, but if we can track time and allocation across projects in real time, it's going to show us when a team member is approaching capacity. It's going to be able to recommend to us, some team configurations based on a role. Maybe we need to go grab another a researcher or someone that's going to be on vacation, et cetera. We need to get some more support. So back to me saying it, instead of relying on our gut feel or spreadsheets, this is simply going to allow us manage our capacity proactively, so we're preventing burnout and delivering quality. So if you do use a project management software, we're going to give you an example of that in a few minutes. You can ask whatever embedded AI is to approximate the time commitment of each task and then gauge team member availability based on what tasks have been assigned also to you. And so again, pairing a heat map with AI is just going to transform resourcing our team from being very reactive to very strategic. Once we implement it, it won't feel foreign. It'll actually make things a lot easier and feel a lot stressful when it comes to our project leadership. We've got those that are working in operations that would really benefit well, even from a higher level. They're the ones that are assessing search engagement. If we have these in place, this heat map in place, it's going to be great for those that are assigning search projects and seeing what internal resources are doing, because we've got a good read on where people are. So we're going to think next about managing multiple searches without losing control. Just because you are great at executive search does not mean that you're great at project management. Okay, so managing a single search plan with care and precision, it's a skill. Is it 4, 5, 6, 8, 18, 30? I don't know what your search load entails, but there's a lot at stake. And so having a repeatable framework is really, really critical. And you can't just willpower your way through 6 active searches, or however, whatever your number is. We've got to have a system that's going to track progress. So we're going to talk about implementing systems that track availability and scheduling. So now we're going to track process, spot any sort of bottlenecks that we come up with, and then also stay aligned with the clients without reinventing the wheel. Okay. If we're going to effectively and efficiently manage multiple searches, these 5 guidelines, you need a system, not just a discipline. It might make sense in your head, but if it's not making sense in collaboration with the rest of your team, it's not going to be effective. We've got to standardize the core. And what I mean by that, if we standardize the core and customize the edges, I love that language. If we standardize the core and customize the edges, every search will have some unique nuances. But 80% of the process can be standardized. The stakeholder alignment, the timeline management, the reporting, all of that can be standardized. So we're going to standardize the core, customize the edges, and use a consistent plan or template across the searches, and then adjust it, but only when it's needed. So that way you've got visual progress and you can make it visual to you, both to you and to your team. I feel some pressure right now for deliverables for client engagement so that my clients make a decision on what candidates they're going to meet in person. And they said, we're not available to meet in person until the end of summer. Well, what that allows is a visual expectation of timeline. And then that data, in fact, changes my day-to-day a little bit, because I'm not as rushed getting meetings with my MD. I'm not quite as rushed getting meetings if folks are away for vacation, candidates are away from vacation. I'm able to really think through, I know my visual that's coming for the client, what those expectations are, and I can really think about that. So if we are time blocking by the search stage, we need to be able then to timeline it by the stage, not just what the client says they need. So sometimes we serve them best by really communicating the timeline that best serves the search, and not just what the client wants. So that's a fine line, but we really should talk about that collectively in order to bring that high value. That's what the clients need from us. And then finally, we're going to do check-in on progress and energy. Look, we've got to have burnout checkpoints. You've got to be transparent with your key leaders about what a search that may be in trouble, and maybe that changes the number of searches that you need to be running at one time, maybe the intensity, just whatever it is. You've got to have some checkpoints. So put checkpoints into your week intentionally. The people that have been doing this a long time are not the ones, and doing it well, are not the ones that are just doing it all by memory. They're the ones that have a scalable system, something in place for a good check and balance. And so I'm finding my experience lets me know that I need structure. And then what I'm also learning in the last several years is those systems that I can continue to implement and try and then execute the more structure that I have, the better I become as an advisor, as a strategic advisor. I'm not scrambling because we've missed a deadline or a report or something to that effect. So here's just an example of some software for managing multiple searches. It's remembering AI is the car, but you still have to drive it. And so if we know we're managing moving parts all at once, um, the tools are going to either slow us down or sharpen our edge truly. And so this is just where you can map some things directly into your day to day. Some things like for project management, for example, you see Asana, ClickUp, Monday.com. For automation, Zapier and Trello. Writing and meeting summaries. I think some of those feel too many, a little more familiar. And then in terms of knowledge management, Notion and Mem. And what I value here is really the ability to think about those curiously and take the time and the initiative to see where your gaps are. If you recognize you've been able to effectively implement softwares in places and your project management software is a good one, how then can you use it in a deeper way? How can you find out if it has other features and benefits? And if you're not using it, again, these are some examples for you that I think are really effective. We can use knowledge management, things like Notion and Mem. They're kind of like a filing cabinet. So you can store search playbooks, you can have intake forms, you can have market maps, you can, instead of having knowledge that's trapped in your inbox or on somebody else's desk, it's just platforms to give your team a shared sort of searchable brain, if you will. And that way there's more going, it's less siloed even within your team. So these things are just meant to enhance. Remember that. Doesn't, when used strategically, they're going to help us free up our time, reduce some errors, and make us better partners. Remember, it takes a little bit to invest, a little bit of time to invest, but ultimately it's going to save you time. So here's where we're going to have a quick favorite tools exchange. And this is where I need you back in the chat, if you will. Every firm, every team has a tool or a shortcut or a trick that makes life easier. And whether it's a clever way to organize your candidate notes, maybe it's an email tool, a platform that helps you manage your client demands, whatever it is, this is going to be your favorite tools exchange. So put in the chat the name of a tool that you use regularly. And it doesn't have to be AI. It's just what is helping you stay organized. And AI tools that I'm using, I'm implementing through some of the CRMs that have those accessible and available internally. But if I said a non-AI one, I am time blocking, I am scheduling blocking. Going back to that heat map, people can go to my calendar and know how that day is organized. And so that's an example for me. And here comes some examples for you. Great. Zoom info, absolutely. Carve, Granola AI, Trello, OneNote, Box AI. Yep. Yeah. So you resort to calendar time blocking and using Planner and Teams. The fewer standalone tools, the better. Some questions are going to come through. So feel free to answer each other in the chat here. And then what we'll also do, if there are questions that come through that we don't get to, we will also take time, Rebecca and I, to collect those at the end. We'll talk those through and we'll send you answers in the email and in a follow-up email. So just know that that's coming. If we don't get to your question here, we ultimately will. So thank you for that. Take some of these examples from those in the space alongside us, and it's great to see how others are learning and growing in some of these support systems for sure. All right, let's think about our next slide, which is I'll let Rebecca change that for me. Time management. Um, we've spent a good amount of time on how we plan to work efficiently and effectively. Sounds great. Sounds great. But how do we do that? What are some things that you can just start with, or in my context, make sure I continue to do? I get, I think I challenge myself very often because I could get a little just lazy in the execution. And I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I am implementing these things that I know are time sensitive and time critical. So um, if we think about time blocking and how important that is in executive search, I love just sort of Cheryl, you popped in the chat, using Planner and a few things that you're doing for time blocking. It's got to be a way that works. Our schedules are changing hour by hour. We block the time and then our best candidate is available at a time when we already had a commitment. We've got to talk to the best candidate, right? So one of my favorite time management techniques but it's difficult to put into a practice like this, is simply just looking at our time and then making sure that we allow ourselves the opportunity to um, think about what are the MITs, the most important tasks. How are we blocking for those? Bookend your day. Commit to internal meetings, commit to the timeline. If I could see each of your faces, you would probably be shaking your head. How many internal meetings do we have that go over time? Some of these sound simple, but if we don't bookend our day, plan for these most important tasks and block for them, the time gets gone and we're working till midnight. And then the burnout starts. And so when we think about project management and those essential tasks, right? We've got to make sure that those are just the non-negotiables. And that's where we have to have our really deep focused blocks. And so for the most important tasks. And so that's going to be different in your different roles. What does that mean? What does it look like? But as we bookend your day, you're also going to see that in the toolkit. I love the playbook here, and it'll allow you to kind of think about that collectively. But no matter when it begins and ends, carve out 15 minutes of planning at the beginning of the day. At the end of your day, 30 minutes, block it. Don't, just continue to add tasks right up until it's finished, because you need some wrap up time. So hopefully these are things that you can implement, some even flexible time blocks, and you can move those around, call them themed hours, whatever you're going to call them. This is a really good place to implement this time blocking and for your own personal efficiencies. And that's going to help your team. Your team's not going to know what capacity you have if you don't know how much time things are going to take in the day either. So what I would say to in our line of work, we know that our days really don't follow some sort of neat agenda, and whether it's priority shifting, candidate needs, if you're manually blocking your calendar doesn't always stick. So if you can use an AI tool to do that, like a Reclaim AI or Clockwise or Motion, that's just going to bring things back both literally and figuratively. And you have to decide, and I would encourage you to check out these three if you're not using an AI tool for time management yet, and see what's best for you. So Reclaim is probably best for kind of protecting habits, syncing calendars. It's going to reschedule tasks based on priority and meetings, and it'll sync to both Google and to Outlook. So that's also helpful. You can set up, a recurring 90-minute research and sourcing block every Tuesday and Thursday. And if a client call drops into that spot, Reclaim is going to shift that block to either later in the day, or definitely protecting. You can prioritize and protect your core work. really simply with that. So that way you're not needing to constantly rethink it and constantly move it around. Clockwise is great for like team focus, maybe larger firms or larger internal teams where it's going to show where teammates are free. It's how we can have the content for the heat map. That way it's going to suggest meeting times that will still preserve your productive blocks and find out when the most availability might be to the team to even have our internal meetings or suggest the meetings. So I think that Clockwise is something that can be used and available across different consultants and MDs. So, it can group some internal meetings to afternoons. It can protect the mornings for maybe more interrupted work. So there's a few tweaks to using these that is certainly incredibly helpful. And then motion is probably best for someone that's kind of a solo user. If you are more task driven and you have less alignment with a larger team and you want something to help you with your focus, it can combine your calendar, your tasks. It has an AI scheduler, and it'll build your day around the things that are of priority. And then you can drag and drop tasks into your week. And so motion can move them around when it makes the most sense based on the key things that you have, put in place. So, again, pick something that works for you and for your work style, and just try it. Reclaim, again, habit-based. Clockwise is better for maybe teams, and motion is more task-based and something with someone working more uniquely or individually. So adjust it based on your results, add some rules, etc. But this is a real way. If you're not implementing AI for time management, this is a real way that you can do that. One of the things that I feel is so important to land on here is, how do you determine the two most important tasks of your day? Everything feels urgent. It can feel urgent, but nothing truly is. And this is where we're going to show in a minute the Eisenhower matrix. And it's just going to be an example of a calm, strategic lens that really sorts through the noise. Especially it's useful when we're talking about executive search and we've got, client demands, we've got candidate demands, we've got internal demand, we've got all of the things that can just hijack the day. And it's really critical to assess your MITs, the most important tasks. So this Eisenhower matrix, you'll also get a copy of this. And this is kind of like what's urgent versus important, and helps you prioritize the tasks by simply thinking it through. And even though we think we might know it, it's still caught up here and causing a rethinking and overthinking and stress that isn't really necessary or needed. And maybe because we're on a different task and we haven't thought through that something can be delegated, or something should be deleted, or something is important but not urgent, and we have to decide this. Once we make a decision, hey, listen, this new proposal is really important, but they're not expecting it until next Thursday. So because of that, I'm going to allot the time here or there. And using something like this first quadrant is more of a do it now. It's both urgent and important. And so we know it's a task that has to happen right away. We've got other things, that we would use this matrix to kind of cover. I think our biggest remiss is if we don't think about it. This Eisenhower scan of your to-do at the beginning of the week. Put an Eisenhower scan on your calendar. Put that as an agenda item, and allow your thoughtfulness here to really delegate and determine your priorities. You're not caught off guard, and there's a whole lot less. What I'll talk about next is burnout as a result. And so finally, I cannot believe how quickly the session has gone by, but to kind of close it out, I want to acknowledge burnout resilience. I've witnessed it far too many times in my years of working. We're very driven, we're very detail oriented, constantly toggling back and through the demands. And what we don't say out loud, even the best MDs and consultants burnt out. You think about it, in education, we think about teacher burnout and why, but we don't think about researcher burnout and why, or associate, whatever team member whatever a part of the team you are. So did we take a real break today? Evaluating that. Is there a block that was energizing? My work can be very energizing. Other parts of my work can be very draining. And so recognizing that perhaps if I know there is a block of my work or a piece of my work that's very draining, perhaps I don't schedule 9 Zooms in the course of a day or whatever. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. What is it that's draining you versus what is it that's energizing you? And then how can we sort that out? And then, all right, so today was a day that was draining, and for these reasons, where can I create more space for tomorrow? And so I think that that's certainly something that's really critical. I guess finally, let's go to the toolkit. You're going to get a burnout mitigation and time optimization toolkit. It'll be a part of your playbook. So many touch points, so many things to kind of introduce. I want to make sure that we allow time for questions, but since we only have about 3 minutes left in our time together, I've got to toss it back to Rebecca here for some closure. But please take a minute to put questions in the chat. We want to know them. We don't want you to leave here with questions unanswered. We want to recognize that we might have the answers. We might need to go find them for you, but either way, we want to be your resource, your professional resource. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. And Rebecca, I will toss it back to you for some final comments and things about Workshop 2.
Thank you so much, Steph, and thank you all for being here again. As Steph mentioned, if you have any lingering questions, please go ahead and drop them in the question and answer box. We have about 2 minutes left, so anything that we cannot answer live, we will compile and include in the follow-up resource. So on that note, you all will be getting a follow-up email from us, which will include not only the playbook again, as well as some follow-up strategies that we will be compiling in a summary document. But you will also be receiving a survey. So we are always looking to improve what we do at AESC. So we would really value your feedback. If you are only registered for this session, we would love to see you back for session 2 and 3. So you can go ahead and email at learndev@aesc.org if you are interested in registering for future sessions. So I see a few questions. So Steph, I think we have
Yeah, I
time
see
to answer
Sarah's
one.
question. Sarah, we will think about that one. We will address it. How do we better manage candidate scheduling needs? These can derail even the best planning. Proactively, is and communicating too. And also don't be afraid to ask your client for blocks in the future that are then held in the calendar. Even if candidates are not ready, we're not ready to present candidates. We don't even know who they are yet. We don't even have their names. But XYZ client, hold the times for us. Should we be ready for you then? It's a lot easier to release the time than it is to gain it back. And so one way to do that then is to introduce that timeline to the candidates very early also. If they were to move forward to the next step, this is what's coming. And so that's just one little thing. So Sarah, thank you for that. And then thank you for others that we don't have time, Uresi and Caitlin, or even others that want to drop a few questions in, but Rebecca and I will talk about them and send it to you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. We appreciate your participation today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.